The Velthari had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were beings made of living crystal, beautiful and cold, and they believed they were better than everyone else. They had a simple way of dealing with new species they found in the stars. They called it the reduction trials. The idea was simple. When the Velthari found a new intelligent species, they would capture some of them. They would take away everything these beings owned. Every piece of clothing, every tool, every weapon, every bit of technology. Then they would drop these naked, helpless creatures on a dangerous planet and watch them die. Most species died quickly. Some lasted a few days. A few managed to survive for weeks before the cold or the heat or the hungry animals killed them. The Velthari recorded everything. They believed that a species which could not survive without its tools was weak and deserved to die. Those very rare species that somehow lived through the trial were allowed to join the Velthari Empire. But they joined as servants, not as equals. The trial broke their spirits. It showed them how weak they really were without their precious machines and devices. For 3,000 years, this system worked perfectly. The Velthari had conquered hundreds of species this way. They had built the largest empire in galactic history. They believed nothing could challenge them. Then they found the humans, the colony ship. Meridian's hope was traveling through unexplored space when the Velthari caught it. The ship carried 2,000 human colonists looking for a new home among the stars. The Velthari did not care about their dreams or their families or their hopes. They only cared about the trial. High Adjudicator Kethrol was in charge of the human trials. He was very old, even for a Velthari, and he had overseen hundreds of these tests. He stood in the examination chamber of his ship and watched the humans being processed. His crystal body caught the cold white light and scattered it into rainbows that no one admired. His assistant stood beside him, reading information from a screen. "The species calls itself human," the assistant said. "They come from a planet called Earth. Basic primate biology. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Nothing special. Their physical abilities?" Kethrol asked. "Poor," the assistant replied. "They have no natural armor. No claws worth mentioning. No poison. They cannot regrow lost body parts. Their skin is soft and tears easily. They can only survive in a very narrow range of temperatures. Too hot and they die. Too cold and they die." Kethrol made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Another fragile species. They will not last long." The Velthari selected 50 humans for the trial. They chose carefully. They wanted a mix of different types. Old and young. Strong and weak. Smart and simple. Men and women. They even took 2 children, because the Velthari believed in being thorough. Among the chosen were Dr. Sarah Chun, a scientist who studied alien life. Commander David Acontrol, a military officer with 30 years of service. Helen Vasquez, a 72-year-old retired teacher. Thomas Park, an engineer who built machines. And many others, from many different jobs and backgrounds. The Velthari took everything from them. They made the humans remove all their clothes. They took their shoes. They took their jewelry. They scanned their bodies and removed anything that was not natural. Metal fillings in teeth were pulled out. Medical implants were cut from flesh. One woman had a device in her heart that kept it beating properly. They took that too. She died on the examination table, and the Velthari simply noted this in their records and moved on. The remaining 49 humans were loaded onto a small transport ship. They were not given food or water or blankets. They were not told where they were going or what would happen to them. They were treated like animals being sent to a slaughterhouse. The transport ship flew for 6 hours. Then it landed on a planet called XR7. XR7 was not a nice place. It was a world of black volcanic rock and poison air and extreme temperatures. During the day, the sun baked the stone until it could burn skin. During the night, the cold could freeze water solid in minutes. Strange creatures lived in the shadows, things with too many legs and too many teeth. Nothing about XR7 was friendly to life. The transport ship landed on a high plateau of black stone. The door opened. The humans were pushed out into the alien morning. Then the ship lifted off and flew away, leaving them alone. Kethrol watched through cameras mounted on flying drones. He saw the humans standing naked on the black rock. He saw their fear. He saw some of them crying. He saw others staring at the sky where the ship had disappeared. "Begin recording," he told his assistant. "Mark the time. I predict complete extinction within 2 planetary rotations." "I agree," the assistant said. "They have no chance. Look at them. They are already falling apart." It was true that some humans had fallen to their knees. Some were screaming. Some were holding each other and weeping. The 2 children, Marcus, who was 9, and Yuki, who was 6, were crying for their parents, who had not been selected for the trial. But Kethrol noticed something else too. Not all the humans were panicking. Some of them were looking around. Their eyes were moving across the landscape, studying it. The military officer, Okonkwo, was already walking toward a rocky outcrop, examining the terrain. The scientist, Chun, was kneeling on the ground, picking up stones and looking at them closely. And the old teacher, Helen Vasquez, was watching the flying drone with a look on her face that Kethrol did not like. It was not the look of a victim. It was the look of someone who was already making plans. Kethrol pushed this thought away. He had seen many species try to fight their fate in the early hours. They always failed. The universe was hard and cold, and it did not care about courage or determination. Without tools, without technology, intelligent beings were just smart. Animals waiting to die. He settled back to watch the extinction of another species that he did not know that he was about to learn a lesson that would shake the foundations of the Velthari Empire. He did not know that these soft, weak, fragile creatures carried something inside them that his scanners could not detect. They carried fire. Not in their hands, but in their minds. A fire that had been burning for 3 million years. A fire that had never gone out, no matter how dark the night became. The Velthari had taken everything from the humans. They were about to discover that they had not taken nearly enough. Sarah Chun stood on the black rock and felt the cold wind cut through her bare skin. Her feet were already hurting from the sharp stones. Her body was shaking. Every part of her brain was screaming that she was going to die. She took a deep breath. Then another. She forced herself to think. Around her, the other humans were in different states of panic. Some sat on the ground with empty eyes. Others walked in circles, talking to themselves. A few were arguing loudly about what to do, their voices sharp with fear. Commander Okonkwo pushed through the crowd. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his body from old battles. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had seen death many times. His face was calm, but Sarah could see the fear in his eyes too. "Listen to me," he shouted. "Everyone, listen." Some people turned to look at him. Others kept crying or pacing. "We need to move," Okonkwo said. "Standing here will kill us. When the sun goes down, the temperature will drop. We need shelter. We need warmth. We need to work together. Work together with what?" A man shouted back. "We have nothing. They took everything." "We have each other," Okonkwo replied. "We have our hands. We have our brains. That is more than nothing." Sarah looked down at the ground. Pieces of black stone lay everywhere. She bent and picked one up. It was volcanic glass, sharp and smooth. She turned it over in her hands, feeling its edge. It was already naturally sharp enough to cut. A memory came to her. Years ago, she had visited a museum on Earth. She had seen stone tools made by ancient humans, millions of years before civilization existed. Those ancestors had survived ice ages and predators and famines with nothing but rocks and sticks and fire. "He is right," Sarah said loudly. "They did not take everything." People turned to look at her. She held up the piece of volcanic glass. "This is a knife," she said. "Or it can be. Our ancestors survived for millions of years without metal, without machines, without anything except what they could find and make. We can do the same." Helen Vasquez, the old teacher, walked forward. Her white hair was blowing in the wind and her old body was shaking from the cold. But her eyes were sharp and clear. "I taught chemistry for 40 years, Helen said. "I know how to make things. Fire, soap, medicine, poison. All I need are the right materials." She pointed toward the distance, where steam rose from cracks in the ground. "Those vents mean heat and minerals. That forest over there means wood and plants. The stream I saw when we landed means water and clay." "Fire," the engineer, Thomas Park, said suddenly. "We can make fire. Friction or flint and steel if we can find iron pyrite." The word spread through the group like electricity. Fire, the oldest tool, the first technology, the thing that had separated humans from animals millions of years ago. Something changed in the air. The panic began to fade. People started looking around with new eyes. They were not seeing a death trap anymore. They were seeing resources. Okonkwo took charge. He organized groups. Strong people would gather materials. Smart people would figure out how to use them. Everyone else would help however they could. They moved toward a rocky cliff at the edge of the plateau. There, they found a shallow cave, big enough to shelter all of them. It was not deep, but it blocked the wind. That was a start. The work began. Thomas Park and 3 others searched for the right kind of stones. They needed hard stone that would make sparks when struck. After an hour, they found what they were looking for in a small cave nearby. Chunks of yellow mineral that Park identified as iron pyrite. Meanwhile, others had gathered dry plant material from the edge of the forest. They were careful, watching for predators. Twice they saw large creatures with 6 legs and sharp teeth watching them from the shadows. But the creatures did not attack. Not yet. Sarah organized the plant gathering. She used her knowledge of biology to identify which plants might be useful and which might be dangerous. She found several that looked similar to earth plants she recognized. Some had fibers that could be twisted into rope. Others had leaves that might be good for medicine. The children, Marcus and Yuki, were not useless. Their small hands were perfect for delicate work. Marcus helped twist plant fibers into thin strings. Yuki collected small pieces of dry grass and bark for starting fires. As the sun began to set, the temperature dropped fast. People started shaking badly. Fingers turned numb. Breath turned to fog in the cold air. Thomas Park knelt by a pile of dry grass and bark. He held a piece of iron pyrite in one hand and a sharp piece of hard rock in the other. His hands were shaking from the cold, making it hard to work. He struck the stones together. A few small sparks flew out but died immediately. He tried again, and again, and again. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on." The other humans gathered around, watching. Some held more dry material ready. Others blocked the wind with their bodies. Everyone was silent, barely breathing. Thomas struck the stones one more time. A spark landed on the dry grass. A tiny red glow appeared. Thomas bent down and blew on it gently, so gently. The glow grew brighter. A thin line of smoke rose up. Then, suddenly, flame. The fire caught the dry grass and spread to the small sticks and bark piled around it. Orange and yellow light filled the cave. Heat pushed back the deadly cold. Someone laughed. Then someone else. Then everyone was laughing and crying at the same time. They crowded around the fire, feeling its warmth on their frozen skin. Outside the cave, the predators that had been creeping closer stopped. They had never seen fire before. The light and heat confused them. After watching for a while, they turned and walked away into the darkness. Kethrol watched through his drones. His crystal body had gone very still. They made fire, his assistant said, his voice filled with disbelief. On the first night. No species has ever made fire on the first night. Kethrol did not respond. He was staring at the image on his screen. 49 naked humans sitting around a fire they had made with their own hands, on a planet that should have killed them within hours. In the cave, Helen Vasquez sat next to little Yuki and Marcus. She put her old arms around them both. You see? She said softly. This is what humans do. When things are worst, we find a way. We always find a way. The fire crackled and popped. Outside, the alien night was cold and dark and full of dangers. But inside the cave, humanity had won its first victory. It would not be the last. By the third day, the Velthari observers had stopped making predictions about when the humans would die. The camp had grown. What started as a simple cave was now a small community. The humans had built walls of stacked stone at the cave entrance to block wind and keep out predators. They had made beds of soft plant material. They had created storage areas for food and tools. And they had made weapons. Sarah Chun watched as Commander Okonkwo tested a new spear. He held it up, checking its balance, then threw it at a target they had set up. The spear flew straight and true, its sharp stone point sinking deep into the wood. Good, Okonkwo said. Very good. Make 10 more like this one. The spear was a beautiful thing in its simple way. The shaft was made from a straight branch, carefully selected and dried over the fire until it was hard as bone. The point was volcanic glass, shaped by patient hands into a deadly blade. Plant fiber rope held everything together, but the spears were just the beginning. Thomas Park had set up a workshop near the back of the cave. He spent hours there, making tools. Knives for cutting, axes for chopping wood, needles made from bone for sewing. Every day he made something new. Every day, life got a little easier. Helen Vasquez had become the group's chemist. She had found clay near the stream and was making simple pottery. She had discovered plants that could be used for medicine. She had even figured out how to make a kind of soap from animal fat, ash. But her most important discovery was poison. This plant, she told Sarah, holding up a bundle of purple leaves, is very toxic. The sap causes paralysis in small amounts and death in large amounts. I have been testing it on insects. Sarah looked at the leaves with respect. For hunting? For hunting, Helen agreed. A small cut from a poisoned blade will bring down an animal much larger than we could kill otherwise. On the fourth day, the hunters went out for the first time. Okonkwo led a group of 8 people, all carrying spears. They moved carefully through the alien forest, watching for danger. The trees here were not like Earth trees. They had blue bark and leaves that moved even when there was no wind. Strange sounds came from the shadows. They found a herd of large animals drinking from a pond. The creatures looked something like deer, but with 6 legs and hard shells on their backs. They were big, almost twice the size of a human. We cannot kill one of those with just spears, whispered one of the hunters. We do not need to kill it quickly, Okonkwo replied. We only need to wound it. The poison will do the rest. He selected his target, an animal on the edge of the herd. He moved slowly, carefully, using the plants for cover. When he was close enough, he stood and threw his spear with all his strength. The spear hit the animal in the side. The creature screamed and ran. The whole herd scattered into the forest. The hunters followed the blood trail. They walked for almost an hour. Then they found their prey lying on the ground, still alive but unable to move. The poison had worked. Okonkwo ended its suffering quickly with a stone knife. That night, the humans ate meat for the first time since the trial began. It was not a desperate meal. It was a feast. They cooked the meat over the fire, adding herbs that Sarah had identified as safe to eat. They saved the bones for tools. They cleaned the hide and stretched it to dry. They kept the fat for soap and lamp fuel. They wasted nothing. After they ate, something unexpected happened. A young woman named Maria, who had been a musician before the trial, began to sing. It was a simple song, one that everyone knew. One by one, the other humans joined in. Their voices rose up into the alien night, filling the cave with sound. Kethral's assistant was confused. "What is that noise?" he asked. Kethral listened to the strange sounds coming from the cave. He had studied many species, but he had never heard anything quite like this. "I believe it is called singing," he said. "It appears to serve no practical purpose. Then why do they do it?" Kethral thought about this for a long moment. "I do not know," he admitted. What he did not understand was that the singing served a very important purpose. It built bonds between the humans. It reminded them who they were. It lifted their spirits and gave them strength. It was technology, too, in its own way. Technology for the soul. By the 10th day, the camp had changed even more. The humans had divided into different groups based on their skills. Hunters brought back meat. Gatherers collected plants and materials. Builders made tools and improved the camp. Teachers passed on knowledge. The children were not left out. Marcus had become an expert at making rope. His small, nimble fingers could twist plant fibers faster and tighter than anyone else. Yuki followed Helen everywhere, learning about plants and helping to sort the ones they collected. "She has a good memory," Helen told Sarah. "She remembers which plants are safe and which are dangerous better than most of the adults." Sarah smiled. "She is only 6 years old. Age does not matter," Helen replied. "What matters is that she is learning. As long as we pass down knowledge, we survive. That is what humans do. We teach, we learn, we remember, and we never stop." On the 15th day, something important happened. The engineer Thomas Park came running into the camp with excitement on his face. "I found iron ore," he said. "Real iron, in a cave about 2 hours from here. If we can build a hot enough fire, we can make metal tools." The camp erupted with excitement. Metal meant better knives, better spear points, better axes. Metal meant they could build things that stone and wood could never make. "How hot does the fire need to be?" Okonkwo asked. "Very hot," Thomas admitted. "Hotter than anything we have made so far. We need a special kind of furnace. I can design one, but it will take time to build." "Then we start building tomorrow," Okonkwo said. That night, Sarah lay by the fire and looked up at the alien stars. Somewhere up there, she knew, the Valkyrie were watching. They had expected the humans to die. Instead, the humans were becoming stronger every day. She thought about what Helen had said. Humans teach and learn and remember. That was their true power. Not their bodies, which were weak. Not their claws or fangs, which they did not have. Their power was in their minds and in their ability to share what they knew. A thought came to her. A dangerous thought. The Valkyrie had cameras watching them. Drones flying overhead. They were studying the humans like animals in a cage, but the humans could study them too. Sarah closed her eyes and smiled. She had a plan. She just needed more time. Time, she was beginning to understand, was on the human side. 20 days had passed as the humans were dropped on XR7. Kethral no longer watched the observation screens with calm confidence. Now he watched with something that felt uncomfortably like fear. The humans had built a village, not a camp. Not a temporary shelter. A real village with permanent buildings made of stone and clay and wood. The structures had walls thick enough to keep out cold and heat. The roofs were covered with layers of plant material that kept out rain. There were separate buildings for different purposes. One for sleeping, one for cooking, one for making tools, one for storing food. At the center of the village was the forge. Thomas Park had done it. He had built a furnace hot enough to melt iron ore into real metal. It had taken 10 days of work, with the whole village helping. They had built special bellows from animal hide to blow air into the fire. They had created clay containers that could hold liquid metal without breaking. They had failed many times before they succeeded, but they had succeeded. Now, the village had iron, real iron that could be shaped into any tool they needed. Knives sharper than any stone blade. Axes that could cut through wood like butter. Needles fine enough to sew the tightest stitches. And weapons. Strong, deadly weapons that made the hunting parties almost unstoppable. Catherall's assistant stood beside him, staring at the screens. "This is not possible," he said for perhaps the 100th time. "No species has ever advanced this fast." They had nothing. Nothing. And now they have metalworking. They did not have nothing, Catherall replied quietly. They had knowledge. We took their tools, but we could not take what they knew. The village had grown in other ways too. The humans had found more caves nearby and were using them for storage and special work. They had built a dam across the small stream to create a pond for fish. They were planting seeds in cleared ground, creating the beginning of farms. And they were teaching. Every day, the adults gathered the children and taught them things. Sarah Chun taught them about plants and animals and how bodies worked. Helen Vasquez taught them about mixing materials to make useful things. Okonkwo taught them how to defend themselves and work as a team. Thomas Park taught them how machines and structures worked. Why do they spend so much time on the children? The assistant asked. The children cannot contribute to survival. They are a drain on resources. Catherall thought about this. The children are their future, he said slowly. They are storing knowledge in living containers. When the adults die, the children will carry that knowledge forward. It is a form of immortality. The assistant made a sound of confusion. Immortality through teaching? That seems inefficient. Perhaps, Catherall said. But it has worked for them for 3 million years. What Catherall did not know was that Sarah Chun had been very busy with a secret project. For the past 6 days, she had been watching the Valkyrie observation drones. She had learned their patterns. She knew when they flew close to the ground and when they stayed high. She knew their blind spots. She had counted them and mapped their movements. On the 18th day, she had shared her plan with Okonkwo. We can catch one, she told him. The small drone that flies low over the forest. It comes at the same time every day. If we set a trap with a net, we can bring it down. Okonkwo had looked at her with surprise. Why would we want to catch a drone? To learn, Sarah replied. To understand their technology. And to send a message. The trap worked perfectly. On the 19th day, the small drone flew into a net made of strong plant fiber rope. It crashed to the ground, and the hunters captured it before it could escape. Sarah and Thomas Park spent all night taking it apart. They could not understand everything they found inside, but they understood enough. They found the camera that watched them. They found the device that sent information back to the Valkyrie ship. And they found something very interesting. A small component that Thomas said was a communication device, something that could send messages across great distances. Can we make it work? Sarah asked. Thomas studied the device for a long time. I think so, he said finally. The power source is strange, but I can connect it to something. Give me one more day. On the 20th day, Sarah Chun stood in front of the captured drone's camera. Behind her, the village was visible in all its glory. People were working, cooking, building. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children laughed in the distance. It looked like a scene from human history, a village from thousands of years ago. But it had been built in just 20 days by naked, tool-less survivors. Thomas Park had rigged the communication device to work. Whatever Sarah said would be heard by the Velthory. I know you are watching, Sarah said, her voice calm and clear. I have known for 6 days. We have been studying you while you studied us. In orbit, Kethril went very still. His assistant made a strange sound. We understand what you did to us, Sarah continued. You wanted to break us. You wanted to prove that without our technology, we were nothing. You expected us to lie down and die. She smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Let me show you what nothing looks like. She pointed behind her at the village. At the forge with smoke pouring from its chimney. At the walls being built higher. At the hunters returning with their kill. At the fields being prepared for planting. 20 days, Sarah said. That is all it took. Give us a year, and we will have writing, mathematics, medicine, government. Give us 10 years, and we will have industry. Give us 100 years, and we will build ships to leave this planet. She held up a piece of paper. On it were drawings and symbols. We have already started our writing system. This is the letter A. It makes the sound, ah. In 10 years, our children's children will be reading books. Kethril stared at the screen. His crystal body was trembling slightly. A feeling he had not experienced in centuries was growing inside him. The feeling was terror. You made a mistake, Sarah said. You thought that taking our tools would make us helpless. But we are not our tools. We are the makers of tools. We are the solvers of problems. We are the species that looked at fire and saw a friend instead of an enemy. She leaned closer to the camera. We have been doing this for 3 million years. Ice ages could not stop us. Predators could not stop us. Famines, plagues, disasters. Nothing stopped us. We always rebuilt. We always came back. We always found a way. She held up the communication device. Your technology, taken apart and rebuilt by naked apes in one night. Imagine what we will do with 3 years. 3 decades. 3 centuries. She pressed a button. The screen went dark. Kethril sat in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to his assistant. Contact the Dominion Council, he said. Tell them we have a problem. What kind of problem? Kethril thought about Sarah Chun's smile. About the village built from nothing. About the iron forge and the fishing pond and the children learning to read. The kind of problem, he said slowly, that does not go away. The Dominion Council chamber was vast and cold and very old. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Light came from glowing spheres that floated in the air, casting strange shadows on the walls. 12 adjudicators sat in a circle of ancient stone chairs. They were the rulers of 3,000 years of galactic conquest. They had broken hundreds of species. They had built an empire that stretched across thousands of stars. Nothing had ever challenged their power. Kethril stood in the center of the circle and prepared to tell them that everything was about to change. The humans have passed the trial, he said. The words fell into silence. No one spoke for a long moment. The eldest adjudicator, a being so old that his crystal form had turned almost black with age, leaned forward. Explain. Kethril activated a display. Images appeared in the air above him. The human village. The forge. The hunting parties with their iron weapons. The children sitting in circles, learning to read symbols drawn in the dirt. 50 humans were placed on XR7 with nothing, Catherall said. No tools, no clothing, no resources of any kind. They should have died within days. Instead, they built a civilization. A village is not a civilization, one of the other adjudicators said. Give them time, Catherall replied. In 20 days, they went from naked survivors to I am working. In 20 days. The fastest previous species took 600 days to reach that point. Most never did. He showed them more images. Thomas Park's forge, Helen Vasquez's chemistry workshop, Sarah Chun's biological research station, the writing system being developed, the plans for new buildings. They share knowledge without competition, Catherall continued. When one human learns something, they teach it to all the others. No secrets, no hoarding. Information spreads through their group like fire through dry grass. Surely this makes them weak, another adjudicator said. A species without individual competition cannot advance. That is what I thought too, Catherall admitted. I was wrong. Their cooperation is not weakness. It is their greatest strength. Every human carries the knowledge of all humans. Kill one, and the knowledge survives. Kill half of them, and the knowledge survives. You would have to kill them all to stop them. The eldest adjudicator made a sound of impatience. Then we kill them all. End the trial. Destroy the planet. Problem solved. Catherall shook his head slowly. It is too late for that. The humans on XR7 are not the problem. There are 8 billion more on their home planet and scattered across their colonies. They already have technology far beyond what we saw in the trial. Starships, weapons, machines we do not fully understand. Then we destroy their home world too. And their colonies? And their ships? Can we find them all? Can we be certain we got every last one? Catherall's voice was rising. These beings went from fire to iron in 20 days. What will the survivors build to come after us? The chamber fell silent. The adjudicators looked at each other with something that might have been uncertainty. It was not a feeling they were used to. Catherall continued. There is something else you need to understand. The trial was designed to break the spirit of species, to show them their own weakness, to make them accept their place as servants. He displayed Sarah Chun's final message again. Her calm face, her knowing smile, her words about 3 million years of survival. The trial did not break them. It did not even slow them down. They looked at the worst we could do to them, and they treated it as a problem to be solved. They were not humbled. They were challenged. And they rose to meet that challenge. The eldest adjudicator spoke again. What do you recommend? Catherall took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been dreading. Return them to their people, he said. Immediately. With apologies. With compensation. With whatever they demand. The council erupted with angry voices. Adjudicators shouted objections and accusations. The crystal walls rang with their fury. Catherall waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again. I know this feels like defeat. I know it goes against everything we have done for 3,000 years. But consider the alternative. He paused. Right now, those 50 humans are not our enemies. They are survivors who want to go home. They have no reason to hate us beyond what we have already done. If we release them, there's a chance for peace. A small chance, but a chance. He displayed the human village again. The children learning. The adults building. The whole community working together. But if we harm them further, if we kill them or continue to imprison them, their people will learn what happened. 8 billion beings who can turn rocks into knives and sparks into fire. 8 billion beings who never stop, never give up, never accept defeat. 8 billion beings who will have every reason to come for us. The eldest adjudicator stared at the images for a long time. You are afraid of them? Yes, Kethral said simply. I am, and you should be too. The vote took less than an hour. The humans would be released. An apology would be issued. The reduction trials would be suspended indefinitely. 3 days later, a Velthury ship landed at the human village on XR7. Kethral himself walked out to meet them. Sarah-chan was waiting. Behind her stood the other survivors. They were no longer naked and helpless. They wore clothes made from animal hide. They carried iron weapons. They stood tall and proud and unbroken. We are returning you to your people, Kethral said. You have our apology for this trial. It will not happen again. Sarah studied him with those strange soft eyes. Why? Kethral thought about all the species his people had broken over 3,000 years. He thought about the lesson the Velthury had been trying to teach. And he thought about the lesson they had learned instead. Because we have realized something, he said. We thought we were testing you. We thought we were showing you your own weakness. Instead, you showed us something we had forgotten. What did we show you? Kethral looked at the village. At the forge and the homes and the fishing pond. At the civilization built from nothing by naked, weaponless survivors in less than one of his planet's rotations around its sun. That true strength is not in what you have, he said. It is in what you can become. We've spent 3,000 years taking things away from species and watching them fall apart. We never met a species that could lose everything and still rise. He paused. Until now. Sarah-chan smiled. It was a gentler smile than her last one, but there was still something dangerous in it. Remember that, she said. Remember what we built from nothing. And think about what we have been building with something for the last 10,000 years. Kethral nodded slowly. We will remember. The humans boarded the ship. They left their village behind, but they took something more important with them. They took the knowledge of what they could do. They took the memory of fire kindled in darkness. They took the certainty that no matter what the universe threw at them, they would find a way to survive. As the ship lifted off. Helen Vasquez sat with young Marcus and Yuki. The children were looking out the window at the planet falling away below them. Will we ever come back? Marcus asked. Helen thought about the village they had built. About the forge and the pottery and the writing system. About everything they had created from nothing. Maybe someday, she said, when we have starships of our own, we could build a city here. A real city. How long would that take? Helen smiled. Not long. Not long at all. We are humans, after all. Building things is what we do. The ship flew upward, into the stars, carrying 49 humans back to their people, back to a civilization that had conquered its own planet and was reaching out to conquer others, back to a species that had looked at the darkness of space and seen not an enemy, but a challenge. In the observation room of the Velthury command ship, Kethral watched them go. He would never forget what he had seen in those 20 days. The fire on the first night, the first spear, the first piece of iron pulled from stone. He would never forget the lesson he had learned. The humans were not dangerous because they were strong. They were dangerous because they could not be stopped. They could not be broken. They could not be defeated by taking things away from them because they carried everything they truly needed inside themselves. The fire that never went out. The hands that never stopped building. The minds that never stopped learning. The hearts that never stopped hoping. This was humanity's gift. This was their weapon. This was their answer to a universe that had tried so hard to kill them. They had survived. They always would.